This is Tom Dillon, the Lifetime Liberal, and today is Thursday, August 4th, 2016, and the title of this rant is Obama's October Surprise, Victory over ISIL, big question mark. So there's been some things going on behind the scenes that is not being reported enough. And one of them is that there appears to be a major play in terms of going after ISIL starting right around now in the last couple weeks and heading into October in Raqqa, Syria, and in Mosul, Iraq. So what we have going here is the Peshmerga, the Kurds, are assimilating on the northern front of Mosul, and the Iraqi forces, in conjunction with some, let's just call it Shia militia groups, are assembling on the south. They're looking at cutting off all of the transportation routes between Raqqa and Mosul, inching their way forward, etc., to the hope that they can get rid of all of ISIL, let's say by the end of October. It's really, really hot, I know, in Iraq right now. I believe temperatures in Baghdad were about 125 degrees, have been really, really hot. So that's not going to take place right now. There's been a lot of bombing going on. The United States has stepped up its bombing. They've provided a tremendous amount of aid to the Peshmerga, which is the Kurdish fighting force. The Turks aren't happy about that. So there's a lot going on in that regard. So let's go to, if you close off Raqqa, and you close off Mosul, and you in essence retake those two cities, that gives an uninterrupted line of territory that will be mostly for the Kurds. And the Turks don't like that because the Kurds are a race of people separate from Muslims who exist mostly or live mostly in southeastern Turkey, northeastern Iraq, northeastern Syria, and some portions of northwestern, actually, I guess, would be Iran. And they would like to be completely independent of all those countries, but where they seem to be doing the most damage or the most work in terms of striving for independence has been in Turkey. They've actually had a guerrilla warfare going on there for 25 or 30 years. It's probably extended much more so behind that. Turks aren't really happy about that. The United States has a very, very delicate balance that they're working with in terms of arming the Kurds. Because the Iraqi government doesn't really like that whole idea. The Iraqi government has their own forces going up there. They have the paramilitary forces that are going up there. The paramilitary forces, which are mostly Shia, are being armed and led by the Quds force, which are Iranian, which are Shia. Now, the Iraqi military supposedly has been integrating much more in terms of the way of Sunnis into it. We'll see what happens. And of course, as all of these things have been going on in terms of the retaking of Fallujah, which was in the Sunni territory earlier this year, I believe it was only in the last 2 months or so. Again, hard-fought battles on the exterior of the city, very, very strong fortification, so to speak. Then when you got into the interior of the city, very weak fortification. This could be the end of ISIL, so to speak, in terms of actually having geographical territory, not in terms of what they want to do and not in terms of them being no longer out there. They will be out there. They will reemerge. Now remember, what we consider ISIL, and of course what Trump and the Republicans say is all Obama's fault. Remember, they were basically Sunni Baathists during the regime of Saddam Hussein in Iraq. They then became Al-Qaeda in Iraq, and then they became ISIL. So they will reemerge as something else. They do have plenty of money. They are well armed. They are still actively recruiting. They are still actively trying to disrupt many things as much as they possibly can in the West. and that will continue. But as we look at what's going to happen as we as the United States strategic bombing in Mosul, strategic bombing in Raqqa, strategic bombing in terms of trying to intercept the movement of goods, material, and forces or men going back and forth between these two strictly to reinforce positions there, is taking a heavy toll. But again, there are hundreds of thousands of people in each one of those cities that are not associated with ISIL at all. And of course, Donald Trump has a vision of how to do it, but we haven't heard about it. And again, the most striking thing I always emphasize is that you win a war by occupying geography. You don't win a war by bombing the crap out of them. You have to occupy territory. You have to occupy the geography. And of course, one of the big things that's a big concern is what if you do get Mosul back? And what if you do get Raqqa back? In Mosul, then you're going to have the Kurds who want to keep the city to themselves because it's mostly in Kurdish land, not necessarily all. And of course, the Shia and Sunni will want to have their say in the whole thing. Now remember, when Mosul was taken in 2014, it was mostly Shia government forces that were in Mosul who didn't really want to be there because it was more Kurdish and it was more Sunni, that when ISIL came in, they cut and ran and they left all kinds of equipment behind. That was just used by ISIL for incredible mayhem and destruction, so to speak. So what happens after Mosul is taken? Will the Kurds want to be taking most of it? Will the Shia, the Shia want to occupy it and reclaim it for the Iraqi government? Will there be inter-country civil war going on in Mosul? Let's hope not. And of course, the United States is embedding more and more people with Iraqi security as they're leading up to this. You know, will there be American casualties in all of this? And if they actually do retake Mosul, you know, how will that governing structure be? And how much of an influence will the United States have? How can they keep the peace there? In Raqqa, which is in Syria, you know, you still have the Soviets that are in there. You still have the Syrian government that is there, and how is that going to be handled? Is it going to be the Peshmerga? Is it going to be the Kurds who are going to be occupying and running it? Will they end up going in there and then having to fight a second battle against Syrian forces? And the Russians, will the Russians go in and rebomb Raqqa so that the Syrian forces can take it over? There's a lot going on in that. And, it goes to show that, these things are very delicate. You can upset parties all over the place. Everyone's mad at everyone else. This is going to be, a very fragile coalition that goes in there, and it is important on the United States and NATO, and there's many other players that are involved in it to keep that type of peace. How well they can keep that peace is what's going to be hard to determine now. But we do have to get rid of ISIL. We do have to get ISIL in Mosul, ISIL in Raqqa. If we can break the two out of those two major cities, it would be considered a victory. ISIL itself would, as a military occupying force, if you want to even remotely call it that, would become virtually non-existent. Their greater war will continue with their cyber warfare and doing things all over the place. And of course, any type of victory will be very delicate, very fragile. It will require even more resources from the United States, from Europe, hopefully also from Saudi Arabia and other wealthy countries in the Middle East to make this, an ongoing, workable, livable situation so that in Iraq, you can have a country finally, hopefully at peace outside of those small terrorist actions, and that will continue. What will happen in Raqqa with the Soviets and the Syrians going against those who actually retook Raqqa, which would be mostly the Peshmerga. These are things, and this will be ongoing. So the surprise will only be that possibly ISIL is completely out of there as a force, so to speak, but they will linger in terms of individual terrorists and individual acts of terrorism. That will continue to go on. Will this help Hillary? The CENTCOM, the United States military, has basically said it's fucking ridiculous to think that we're trying to do this for political purposes. Of course, you want to retake it, especially at that particular time. As I said, it's very hot there right now. They're not going anywhere right now. But they are there is an increased amount of activity in terms of bombing by the U.S. and its allies. It's also, that's been a lot, I believe it said $415 million of military goods was shipped to the Kurds. So this is big time what's going on. May not help Hillary, may help Hillary. Donald's going to be all over on the place. But this planning that's been going into this has been going on for years. The balance of trying to have the Shiite militia groups work with the Shiite military forces from the government, which is mostly Shiite, who they claim now have a lot more Sunni recruits in it. In terms of working together, can all of this actually come about in the next couple of months? Maybe, maybe not. If it is an absolute victory where forces retake both cities, that would be considered a victory. That would be good for Hillary. We'll see what happens.